Before World War II, the U.S. military had a dilemma. They were having a hard time getting protein to their troops. A Hormel plant in Austin, Minnesota created an innovation that would solve these problems. The popularity of Spam was greatly impacted and changed by this versatility in World War II. Prior to being drafted to feed troops in World War II, Spam was just an innocent new product. Spam also provided change to these places where it was stationed during the war. In these places, Spam is still a celebrated food today. Life in America during the 1940s was focused on the events of World War II. The United States declared war on the Axis powers after the bombing on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. For the next 4 years, the United States deployed their military forces to both the Atlantic and Pacific theaters. Companies at home stepped up efforts to help support the U.S. military during their time of need. Soon, troops were being deployed all over the world. In wars, one of the main issues is providing the food for troops, and in World War II, the circumstances were no different. Getting fresh meat to the battlefronts was next to impossible, and without key nutrients, the body becomes weakened and will eventually die. Oftentimes, fresh meats would spoil because of the lack of refrigeration at one part of the journey. This raised the chances of bacterial disease spreading where the spoiled meat was served. These were the problems the military was constantly facing. Thankfully, a Hormel plant in Austin, Minnesota, held the solution to these problems. The Hormel product Spam proved to be an innovative commodity because it was portable, it did not spoil, and it was very versatile. As soon as Spam started showing up at the fronts, the troops immediately reacted to Spam. The troops ate it so much that they became fed up with it, and Spam instantaneously became ridiculed. Many jokes started to go around. For example, Life magazine defined Spam as a meatball without basic training. Shortly after the war, Russian Premier Nikita Khrushchev gave Spam the credit for helping his army survive World War II. In their book, The Book of Spam, Dan Armstrong and Dustin Black explain World War II's impact on the Hormel company. By 1944, a full 90% of Hormel's canned food output was going directly to the armed forces. Just between 1939 and 1942, Hormel's sales doubled, and annual pork processing hit an all-time high at 1.6 million head. By April of 1945, over 100 million pounds of Spam had fed hungry soldiers and civilians overseas. That's the equivalent to over 133 million cans of Spam. The war years proved to be Spam's busiest. Some even go as far to say that without Spam, the Allies could not have won the war. Because of its portability and long shelf life, canned luncheon meat ended up being served to American soldiers 2 or even 3 times a day. Some began to refer to Spam as the meat that failed its physical. General Eisenhower himself sent a letter to Hormel President H.H. Corey, explaining his opinions on the luncheon meat. As Eisenhower once stated, "You might be surprised to learn I have felt a certain kinship with your company. During World War II, of course, I ate my share of Spam, along with millions of other soldiers. I'll confess to a few unkind remarks about it, uttered during the strain of battle. You understand. But as a former commander-in-chief, I believe I can still officially forgive you your only sin, sending so much of it." Despite all the mixed feelings concerning Spam, emotions died down after victory was achieved. Spam sales continued to climb after the GIs returned home. It seemed that despite the grumblings and misunderstandings, quite a lot of veterans still had a special place in their hearts for Spam. Spam also had a long-term effect that changed the world. After the war, Spam luncheon meat made its mark around the world. Because it was carried by American forces, Spam was introduced to many new places in the world. Locations in Denmark, the Philippines, and South Korea became major markets for Spam luncheon meat. Presently, the Spam family of products is distributed in more than 100 countries on 6 continents. More than 122 million cans of the Spam family products are sold worldwide each year, 90 million in the U.S. alone. Recently, the 7 billionth can of Spam was sold. Hawaii has the highest consumption per capita for Spam, where it is in restaurants, convenience stores, and as a staple in nearly every kitchen pantry. This is a lasting legacy to the war's influence on Spain. World War II not only impacted the world, but it also changed the reputation of America's innovative me. And as George A. Hormel once said, originate, don't imitate.